She dropped to her knees in the frozen mud, pressing her hands against the little girl's bleeding forehead, while the other twin screamed her sister's name into the howling wind. The whole town had warned her. Stay away from the Callahan ranch. That woman brings nothing but trouble. But Clara hadn't listened. She'd needed a place to disappear, and Jesse Callahan had needed someone to feed his motherless daughters. Now, with blood on her fingers, and 2 children clinging to her like she was the only solid thing in their world, Clara understood she'd stopped running the moment she arrived. If you want to see how a woman rebuilt her life from ashes and became a mother to the 2 little girls who chose her first stay until the end, hit that subscribe button and drop a comment telling me what city you're watching from. I want to see how far this story travels. The stagecoach jerked hard, throwing Clara Bennett against the wooden seat. She braced herself, one hand on her carpet bag, the other gripping the window frame. "End of the line, miss." The driver's voice cut through the bitter wind. "Bitter Creek." Clara pulled her shawl tighter and stepped down into the cold. December in Wyoming territory felt like stepping into a grave. The sky hung low and gray, promising snow before nightfall. She'd seen plenty of small towns in the past 2 years. This one looked no different. A general store with frost on its windows. A saloon where men huddled near the door. A church with a crooked steeple. Everything weathered, everything tired. Perfect. Tired towns didn't ask questions. "You'll be wanting the hotel." The driver was already reaching for her bag. "The Callahan Ranch. I'm the new cook." His hands stopped moving. He looked at her, really looked, and something shifted in his face. Pity, maybe, or warning. "Callahan's place is 7 miles north. You can't walk it, not in this cold." "I'll manage." "Miss, I don't think you understand." "I understand fine." Clara took her bag from his frozen fingers and pressed a coin into his palm. "Thank you for the ride." She started walking before he could argue. The cold bit through her wool dress, through her threadbare coat, straight into her bones. But she'd been colder. She'd been hungrier. She'd been more desperate than this. Philadelphia felt like a lifetime ago. The Ashford mansion. The accusations. The trial that had cleared her name but destroyed her reputation. She poisoned that child. "I don't care what the jury said." Clara walked faster, as if she could outpace the memory. She couldn't. She'd tried for 2 years now, and the whispers always caught up. The road stretched empty ahead, nothing but brown grass and distant mountains. Somewhere north, a rancher named Jesse Callahan had answered her telegram with 4 words. "Come. Need help immediately." No questions about references. No demands for her history. Just desperation, meeting desperation. The sun was dying when Clara finally saw the ranch. A large barn painted red but fading. A 2-story house with smoke rising from the chimney. Corrals and outbuildings scattered across land that seemed to go on forever. It looked solid, permanent, the kind of place where people put down roots and stayed. Clara had stopped believing in staying a long time ago. She was still 50 yards from the house when the front door flew open. A man stepped onto the porch, and even from this distance she could see his tension shoulders set, hand near his hip, where a pistol probably rested. "That's far enough." His voice carried across the cold air, low and rough. Clara stopped, her carpet bag suddenly heavy in her frozen fingers. "Mr. Callahan." "Who's asking?" "Clara Bennett. Your new cook." Silence. The wind howled between them, and Clara felt him measuring her, this strange woman who'd walked 7 miles through the freezing cold to cook for his family. "You walked from town?" "I did." "Why?" "Because I don't have a horse, and I don't have money for a wagon, and your telegram said you needed help immediately." Clara kept her voice steady, though her teeth wanted to chatter. "I'm here now. Are you going to let me freeze to death on your porch? Or are we going to discuss the position?" Something flickered across his face. It might have been surprise. It might have been respect. He stepped aside and jerked his head toward the door. Come in. Warm up. Then we'll talk. The house hit her like a wall of heat after the bitter cold outside. Clara stumbled slightly, her frozen limbs protesting the sudden change. The front room was large but spare. A sofa, some chairs, a fireplace roaring with flames. Everything clean but empty, like a house that had forgotten how to be a home. Kitchens through there? Jesse Callahan moved past her all efficiency and economy. He was taller than she'd expected, broad-shouldered with dark hair going gray at the temples. His face had the weathered look of a man who'd spent his life outdoors. But it was his eyes that caught her dark brown, too old for his years, carrying grief like a physical weight. She'd seen that look before, in her own mirror. I'll give you the terms. He stopped in the kitchen doorway, turning to face her. 4 in the morning start. 3 meals a day for me, my daughters, and 5 ranch hands. You manage the kitchen, the supplies, the cleaning. Sundays off after breakfast. Daughters. Clara hadn't expected that. The telegram hadn't mentioned children. Twin girls, 7 years old. Something in his voice softened for just a moment, then hardened again. They lost their mother 3 years ago. They can be difficult with strangers. Difficult how? They don't trust easily. Their last cook stayed 2 weeks before leaving in the middle of the night. The one before that lasted 4 days. Jesse's jaw tightened. I'm telling you this now so you understand what you're walking into. This isn't an easy position. I don't need easy, Mr. Callahan. I need work. He studied her for a long moment, and Clara felt exposed under that gaze. She wondered what he saw: a woman past her prime, thin from hard travel with shadows under her eyes, and secrets written in every line of her body. $15 a month, he said finally. Plus room and board. Your quarters are off the kitchen, door locks from the inside. And your daughters. When do I meet them? Now, I reckon. Jesse looked past her toward the stairs. Rosie, Lily, come down here. Silence. Then the creak of floorboards, slow and reluctant. Clara turned to see 2 small figures descending the stairs, identical in every way. Same honey-colored hair in tangled braids, same dark eyes that mirrored their father's, same wary expressions that made them look older than 7. They stopped at the bottom of the stairs, standing close enough that their shoulders touched. A united front against the intruder in their home. Girls, this is Miss Bennett. She's going to be cooking for us. Neither child spoke. They stared at Clara with the kind of assessment that would have been unsettling from adults, let alone children. The one on the left, slightly taller, with a small scar above her eyebrow, lifted her chin. The last cook burned the biscuits. I don't burn biscuits, Clara said evenly. The one before that was scared of horses. I'm not scared of much. The girl's eyes narrowed. Everyone's scared of something. Rosie. Jesse's voice carried warning. Manners. It's fine, Clara said. She crouched down, bringing herself to the girl's eye level. This close, she could see the differences between them. Rosie's harder stare, the other twin's softer chin, the way Lily pressed slightly behind her sister as if seeking protection. You're right. Everyone's scared of something. You want to know what I'm scared of? The girls exchanged a glance. Some silent communication passed between them. What? Lily whispered. Her voice was so quiet, Clara almost missed it. I'm scared of letting people down, of promising something and not delivering. Clara held their gaze. So I'm not going to promise you anything except this. I'll cook your meals, and I won't burn the biscuits, and I'll be here tomorrow and the day after that, unless your father sends me away. That's all I can offer. Rosie's expression didn't change, but something in her shoulders loosened just slightly. Mama used to make apple cake, Lily said, still barely above a whisper. On Sundays. Lily. Rosie grabbed her sister's arm. We don't talk about that. I only meant... I know what you meant. Rosie's voice cracked just for a second before she pulled the coldness back around herself like armor. We should go back upstairs. We have lessons. Jesse cleared his throat. Miss Bennett needs to get settled. You can talk more at dinner. We eat dinner in our room. Rosie was already pulling Lily toward the stairs. We always eat in our room. She didn't wait for permission, just dragged her sister up the stairs, their footsteps fading into the silence above. Clara straightened slowly, watching them disappear. I'm sorry about that. Jesse's voice was heavy. They've been through a lot. They're protecting themselves. I understand that. He looked at her sharply, as if hearing something in her words she hadn't meant to reveal. Do you... Mr. Callahan, you hired me to cook, not to share my history. Clara picked up her carpet bag, suddenly exhausted. Where are my quarters? He showed her to a small room off the kitchen, a bed with a thick quilt, a dresser, a washstand. The door had a bolt on the inside, just as he'd promised. It was more space than she'd had in months. Dinner's usually at 6, Jessie said from the doorway. Tonight just make something simple, whatever you can find in the pantry. And your daughters, will they really not eat with you? Pain crossed his face there and gone in an instant. They haven't eaten at the table since their mother died. I've tried everything. Demanding, begging, bargaining. He shook his head. Some battles aren't worth fighting. They're fed. They're safe. That's what matters. He left before Clara could respond, his boots heavy on the wooden floor. She stood alone in her small room, listening to the wind outside and the silence inside, and wondered what kind of house she'd walked into. The pantry was well stocked. Someone, probably Jesse himself, had been managing the supplies with military precision. Flour, cornmeal, dried beans, salt pork eggs, butter. Everything she needed to make a proper meal. Clara fell into the familiar rhythm of cooking, letting her hands work while her mind wandered. The kitchen was large and clean, with a good stove and plenty of workspace. Through the window she could see the barn, and beyond it the endless gray sky. She was cutting biscuits when she felt it, that prickle of awareness that meant she was being watched. Clara didn't turn around. She'd learned that trick in the Ashford house when the children used to spy on her from doorways. If you want to help, there's beans that need snapping. A long pause, then small footsteps, hesitant but approaching. How did you know I was there? Lily's voice came from just behind her. I've got eyes in the back of my head. Clara glanced over her shoulder and almost smiled at the girl's wide eyes. Or maybe I just heard you breathing. You breathe pretty loud for someone trying to be sneaky. Lily crept closer, her curiosity apparently stronger than her caution. Rosie's better at sneaking. She can move without making any sound at all. Is Rosie watching too? No. She said I shouldn't come down here. She said we don't need another cook who's just going to leave. Lily climbed onto a stool by the work table, moving carefully, as if she expected to be sent away at any moment. But I wanted to see what you were making. Biscuits, beans, fried potatoes. Clara kept her hands moving, kept her voice casual. Nothing fancy. Mama used to let me help in the kitchen, before she got sick. Lily's voice dropped to barely a whisper. I wasn't very good at it. I dropped a whole bowl of eggs once, and she laughed and said it didn't matter, we'd just make something else. Clara's chest tightened. She sounds like she was a good mother. She was. Lily's small fingers traced patterns on the wooden table. Do you have a mother? I did once. She died when I was younger than you. Oh. Lily absorbed this with the matter-of-fact acceptance of children who understood death too early. So you know what it's like, to not have one anymore. Yes. Clara finally turned to face the girl fully. Lily sat perched on the stool, her legs dangling, looking so small and so lost that it made something ache behind Clara's ribs. I know exactly what it's like. Rosie says we don't need a mother. She says Papa takes care of us fine. Lily's voice wobbled slightly. But sometimes I forget what Mama's voice sounded like. And sometimes I can't remember her face unless I look at the picture. and Rosie gets mad when I cry about it, so I don't cry anymore. Maybe Rosie's scared too, Clara said gently. Maybe she doesn't want you to cry because it makes her want to cry, and she's trying to be strong for both of you. Lily's eyes widened. I never thought of that. Sisters protect each other, even when it doesn't look like protection from the outside. Do you have a sister? No. Clara turned back to her biscuits, sliding them into the oven. I don't have anyone. The silence stretched between them, filled with the crackle of the stove fire and the howl of wind outside. Then quietly, maybe you could have us. Clara's hands stilled. What? I said, maybe you could have us. Lily's voice was stronger now, as if she'd made a decision. We don't have a mother. You don't have anyone. Maybe that could work. Sweetheart, I'm just here to cook. That's what the others said too. Lily hopped down from her stool, her brief openness already closing into something more guarded. Before they left, she was gone before Clara could respond, her small footsteps disappearing up the stairs. Dinner was a strange affair. Clara set 3 places at the table, Jesse at the head, the 2 empty chairs where the girls should have been. He came in from the barn smelling of cold air and horses washed at the basin and sat down without comment when he saw the empty seats. I'll take plates up to them after, he said, reaching for the biscuits. It's easier. Easier for who? He looked at her sharply. Excuse me. Clara served herself beans, keeping her voice neutral. I'm just asking, is it easier for them or easier for you? Miss Bennett. Lily came down to the kitchen earlier. Clara met his gaze. She helped me with the beans. We talked. Jessie went very still. She talked to you. She did. About her mother. About being lonely. Clara took a breath. Mr. Callahan, I'm not trying to overstep, but those girls are eating alone in their room every night while their father sits down here doing the same thing. That's not protecting them. That's giving up on them. The silence that followed was thick enough to cut. Jesse's jaw worked, his eyes dark with something that might have been anger or might have been guilt. You don't know anything about my daughters. I know Lily misses her mother so much she can't remember her voice anymore. I know Rosie's so busy being strong that she won't let herself grieve. And I know that 3 years is a long time for children to go without anyone fighting for them to be okay. Clara's voice didn't waver even as her heart pounded. You can fire me for saying this, but you hired me to take care of your family, and this is part of that. Jesse stood up abruptly, his chair scraping against the floor. For a moment, Clara thought he was going to order her out of the house. Instead, he walked to the stairs. Rosie, Lily, come down here. His voice carried through the house, firm, but not angry. Clara heard movement above whispered argument, the sound of small feet. The twins appeared at the top of the stairs, their faces wary. We already ate, Rosie said quickly. We're not hungry. I didn't ask if you were hungry. I told you to come down here. More whispered argument. Then slowly the girls descended. They stopped at the bottom of the stairs, a united front of suspicion. We're going to eat dinner together tonight, Jessie said. As a family. Rosie's chin came up. We don't... I know what we don't do. Jessie's voice softened. I know we haven't done this in a long time, but things are going to change, starting now. He moved to the table and pulled out 2 chairs. The girls exchanged a look that silent twin communication Clara had already started to recognize, and then slowly they walked to the table and sat down. The meal was awkward and mostly silent. Rosie glared at her plate like it had personally offended her. Lily snuck glances at Clara between bites. Jesse ate mechanically, his tension evident in every line of his body. But they were at the table. All 4 of them. For the first time in 3 years. It was Clara who finally broke the silence. These biscuits turned out pretty well, if I do say so myself. Lily giggled, a small surprise sound, quickly stifled. Even Rosie's lips twitched, though she pressed them together firmly. "They're adequate," Jesse said. But there was something in his voice that hadn't been there before, something that might have been gratitude. After dinner, Clara washed the dishes while Jesse took the girls upstairs for bed. She was drying the last plate when he returned, moving quieter than a man his size should be able to. "That's the most they've eaten at that table since Margaret died." Clara nodded, not turning around. "They're good girls. They just need someone to push back a little." "The other cooks didn't push back." "Maybe that's why they left." Jesse moved to stand beside her, reaching for a dish towel. Clara's hands stilled in surprise. "You don't have to." "I'm helping." He took the plate from her hands and dried it with the same methodical efficiency he seemed to apply to everything. "That thing you said earlier, about giving up on them. I shouldn't have." "You were right." The words came out rough, like they cost him something. "After Margaret died, everything fell apart. The girls wouldn't eat, wouldn't sleep, wouldn't let me touch them. Rosie stopped talking for almost a month. Lily had nightmares every night. And I—" He set down the plate, his hands gripping the counter. "I didn't know how to help them. I could barely help myself. Grief does that." "You sound like you know." Clara was quiet for a moment. "I was accused of something I didn't do. 2 years ago. The jury acquitted me, but the damage was done. I lost everything: my job, my home, my reputation." She picked up another plate, not meeting his eyes. "I've been running ever since. Town to town, position to position, always leaving before the rumors catch up. And now I'm here, in your kitchen, trying to start over again." She finally looked at him. "I'm not going to lie to you, Mr. Callahan. I don't have references that will check out. I don't have a history I can prove. But I can promise you this: whatever they said about me, it wasn't true. And I'm not going to hurt your daughters." Jesse studied her for a long moment. Clara held his gaze, letting him see whatever he needed to see. "I believe you," he said finally. "Just like that. I've learned to trust my gut. My gut says you're telling the truth." He hung the dish towel on its hook. "Whatever happened back east, it stays back east. You get a fresh start here. A real one." Something cracked in Clara's chest. Something she'd been holding together for 2 years, with nothing but stubbornness and fear. Her eyes burned, but she refused to let the tears fall. "Thank you," she managed. "Don't thank me yet. Those girls are going to test you every way they know how. Rosie especially." He moved toward the door, then paused. "She was 5 when her mother died, old enough to remember everything, old enough to understand what she lost. And Lily? Lily remembers the love. Rosie remembers the pain." Jesse's voice was heavy. "They've been carrying it alone for too long. We all have." He left her there in the kitchen, the fire dying in the stove, the wind howling outside. Clara finished the dishes and retired to her small room. She bolted the door, always habit, and sat on the edge of the bed, staring at the wall. In the distance, she could hear footsteps upstairs. Jesse's heavy tread, the lighter patter of small feet. A voice as low and gentle saying something she couldn't quite make out. Then silence. She'd told herself this was temporary. A place to hide while the latest rumors died down. A few months, maybe less, and then she'd move on again. But sitting there in that quiet room with the memory of Lily's hopeful face and Rosie's fierce glare and Jesse's unexpected kindness, Clara felt something she hadn't felt in a very long time. The dangerous, terrifying, impossible hope that maybe, just maybe, she could belong somewhere again. She pushed it down the way she always did. Hope was a luxury she couldn't afford. Hope led to disappointment, and disappointment led to pain, and she'd had enough pain to last a lifetime. But as she lay down and closed her eyes, she couldn't quite silence the voice in her head. Lily's voice, small and wistful. "Maybe you could have us." The first week passed in a blur of flower-dusted mornings and fire-lit evenings. Clara woke before dawn each day, her body remembering the rhythm, even when her mind still clung to sleep. By the time the ranch hands stomped in for breakfast, she had coffee boiling, eggs frying, and biscuits browning in the oven. The men were rough but respectful. Tomas Delgado, the oldest of them, tipped his hat to her every morning and called her Señorita Clara, with an old-world courtesy that made her smile. The others followed his lead, keeping their distance, minding their manners. But it was the twins who consumed her thoughts. Lily crept into the kitchen almost every afternoon, now finding excuses to help snapping beans, stirring batter, setting the table. She talked constantly when Rosie wasn't around, filling the silence with stories about the horses, the barn cats, the snowfall she was hoping for. Mama loved snow, Lily said on the fourth day, her small hands covered in flour as she helped knead bread. She used to take us outside and catch snowflakes on our tongues. She said each one was different, like people. That's a nice memory, Clara said softly. Rosie doesn't like when I talk about Mama. Why do you think that is? Lily was quiet for a moment, her fingers working the dough with surprising skill for a 7-year-old. Because Rosie was there. When Mama died, she saw it happen. Clara's hands stilled. What do you mean? I was sleeping, but Rosie wasn't. Lily's voice dropped to barely a whisper. She never told me what she saw. She won't talk about it. But sometimes at night she screams, and Papa has to hold her until she stops. Before Clara could respond, footsteps sounded on the stairs. Lily's mouth snapped shut, and she became very interested in the bread dough. Rosie appeared in the doorway, her dark eyes taking in the scene with immediate suspicion. What are you doing down here? Helping Miss Clara? We don't need to help her. She gets paid to cook. I want to help. Lily's chin came up in a rare show of defiance. Mama used to let me help. Mama's not here. Rosie's voice cracked on the words. Mama's never coming back, and she's not Mama. So stop pretending she is. I wasn't. Yes, you were. Rosie grabbed her sister's flour-covered hand and pulled. Come on, we have lessons. But I don't want... Lily, now. The younger twin looked at Clara with something like apology in her eyes, but she went. She always went when Rosie pulled. They disappeared up the stairs, and Clara was left alone with the bread dough and the echo of Rosie's broken voice. She saw it happen. What had that child witnessed? What was she carrying alone, too young to understand and too proud to ask for help? Clara finished the bread and slid it into the oven, her mind churning. She'd only been here a week, but already she could see the fault lines running through this family. Jesse's guilt, Lily's loneliness, Rosie's rage. They were all drowning, just in different ways. And she was in no position to save anyone. She couldn't even save herself. The door opened behind her, and Jesse walked in, bringing cold air and the smell of horses. Bread smells good. It'll be ready in an hour. Clara wiped her hands on her apron. Mr. Callahan, can I ask you something? He paused halfway to the coffee pot. Depends on what it is. Lily told me that Rosie was there, when your wife died. Jesse's entire body went rigid. The coffee pot hung suspended in his hand, forgotten. She shouldn't have told you that. She's worried about her sister. She said Rosie has nightmares. That's not your concern. With respect, sir, you hired me to take care of your family. If one of your daughters is suffering... I know she's suffering. Jesse's voice came out harsh, ragged. He set the pot down with more force than necessary. I know. I hear her every night screaming for her mother. I hold her until she stops shaking. And then in the morning, she pretends nothing happened. And I let her, because what else am I supposed to do? Have you talked to her about what she saw? She won't talk about it. Not to me, not to anyone. Jesse's hands gripped the counter, his knuckles white. The doctor said to give her time. The preacher said to pray. Everyone had advice and none of it helped. Clara moved closer, keeping her voice gentle. What happened to your wife? The silence stretched so long, she thought he wouldn't answer. Then quietly, childbirth. The baby came too early, a boy. He didn't survive. Jesse's voice was hollow. Margaret started bleeding, and the doctor was 2 hours away, and I did everything I could, but there was so much blood, and she just kept getting weaker. And Rosie was there. She'd come to see the baby. She saw her mother. He couldn't finish. Clara watched his shoulders shake once, then go still as he forced control back over himself. "I'm sorry," she said. "I shouldn't have asked." "No, you should know." Jesse turned to face her, his eyes red but dry. "Margaret asked me for another child. I was the one who wanted to wait, but she kept saying the girls needed a brother or sister, and finally I agreed, and it killed her. She died because I couldn't say no. She died because childbirth is dangerous, because sometimes terrible things happen and there's no one to blame." "There's always someone to blame." Jesse's voice was bitter. "The town made sure I knew that. Cornelius Whitmore's wife told everyone who'd listen that I worked too hard, stayed away, too much, didn't take proper care of my wife. As if I didn't know. As if I didn't hate myself enough already." Clara's chest tightened. "Whitmore? Is that the banker? His wife runs the town. What Prudence Whitmore says everyone believes." Jesse moved toward the door, clearly done with the conversation. "You'll meet her soon enough. She makes it her business to know everyone else's." He was gone before Clara could respond, leaving her alone with the smell of baking bread and the weight of secrets she hadn't meant to uncover. The trip to town came 3 days later. Jesse needed supplies and Clara needed to place orders for the coming weeks. The ride was cold and quiet, the twins bundled in the back of the wagon, Clara on the seat beside Jesse. Bitter Creek looked different in the harsh light of midday. Smaller somehow, more exposed. People moved through the streets with their heads down, shoulders hunched against the cold. "I'll be at the feed store," Jesse said, pulling the wagon to a stop outside the general store. "You get what you need here. Girls, stay with Miss Clara." Rosie's face darkened. "We can stay in the wagon." "You'll freeze. Go inside and warm up." Jesse's tone left no room for argument. He climbed down and headed across the street, leaving Clara with 2 sullen children and a list of supplies. The bell over the door chimed as they entered. The store was warm, at least, with a fire burning in a potbelly stove and shelves stacked high with goods. A thin man behind the counter looked up, his expression neutral. "Help you, miss? I'm placing an order for the Callahan Ranch." Clara handed over her list. "Most of this can be delivered next week, but I'll take the coffee and sugar today." The man, Jenkins, according to the sign, studied the list with raised eyebrows. "That's a sizable order." "It's a sizable ranch." "So you're the new cook?" His eyes flicked to the twins, who had drifted toward a display of penny candies. "Heard about you. Word travels fast in Bitter Creek." Before Clara could respond, the door opened behind her. The temperature in the room seemed to drop, and Jenkins straightened up like a soldier coming to attention. "Mrs. Whitmore, good morning." Clara turned to see a woman in her 50s dressed in expensive wool, with a fur collar, her gray hair pinned beneath a hat that probably cost more than Clara earned in a month. Her face was handsome, but hard, with eyes that catalogued everything they saw. "Mr. Jenkins." The woman's voice was cultured, precise. "I need you to hold my order until Thursday. My husband will send someone to collect it." "Yes, ma'am, of course." Those sharp eyes swung to Clara, and something flickered in them. Recognition, interest. Clara couldn't tell. "You must be the new cook at the Callahan place. Clara Bennett, isn't it?" "Yes, ma'am." "I'm Prudence Whitmore. My husband owns the bank." She said it the way someone might say, "My husband owns the town," which was probably closer to the truth. "How are you finding Wyoming territory? Quite different from Philadelphia, I imagine." Clara's blood went cold. "I'm sorry. Philadelphia. That's where you're from, isn't it?" Mrs. Whitmore smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. "I make it my business to know who's coming into our community. A woman alone traveling so far west, one wonders what she might be running from." "I wasn't aware my history was public business." Everything is public business in a small town, Miss Bennet. Mrs. Whitmore's smile sharpened. I'm sure you understand. A woman in your position must be very careful about her reputation. The threat was subtle but unmistakable. Clara forced herself to breathe evenly. I appreciate your concern, Mrs. Whitmore, but I'm just here to cook. Of course you are. The older woman's gaze drifted to where Rosie and Lily stood by the candy display, watching the exchange with wide eyes. Those poor children. They've been through so much. One hopes their father is being careful about who he allows into their lives. Papa is very careful. Rosie's voice cut across the store, sharp and defiant. He wouldn't hire anyone who wasn't good enough for us. Mrs. Whitmore's eyebrows rose. What a loyal child. Your mother would be proud. Don't talk about my mother. Rosie. Clara's voice was quiet but firm. Go wait outside with your sister. But she... Now please. Rosie's jaw clenched, but she grabbed Lily's hand and stalked out of the store, the bell chiming harshly behind them. Mrs. Whitmore watched them go, with something like satisfaction. Such spirit. A pity it's not properly directed. That child needs a firm hand. A mother's influence. She has plenty of influence. Clara met the woman's gaze directly. From people who actually care about her. The words hung in the air between them. Mrs. Whitmore's expression hardened, all pretense of friendliness dropping away. Be careful, Miss Bennet. Bitter Creek has a long memory. The last thing those girls need is another disappointment. She turned to Jenkins. I'll expect that order Thursday. Don't be late. She swept out of the store, leaving silence in her wake. Jenkins cleared his throat. I'll have your supplies ready in a few minutes. Thank you. Clara's voice came out steadier than she felt. And Mr. Jenkins? Whatever Mrs. Whitmore has told you about me, I'd appreciate if you'd form your own opinion. He met her eyes for just a moment, then nodded. I'll do that, miss. The ride back to the ranch was tense. Jesse noticed immediately that something was wrong. How could he not, with Rosie vibrating with fury and Clara silent beside him? What happened? Mrs. Whitmore happened. Rosie's voice was bitter. She was mean to Miss Clara. She said things about Mama. Jesse's hands tightened on the reins. What things? She said I need a mother's influence, and she looked at Miss Clara like she was dirt. Language, Rosie. It's true. She's awful. I hate her. We don't hate anyone. But Jesse's voice lacked conviction. What exactly did she say to you, Miss Clara? Clara chose her words carefully. She made it clear she knows where I'm from, and that she intends to share that information with anyone who'll listen. Damn. Jesse's jaw worked. I should have known. Prudence Whitmore can't stand not knowing everyone's business. It's worse than that. Clara took a breath. She knows about the accusations. In Philadelphia. I don't know how much, but she knows. The wagon fell silent, except for the creak of wheels and the steady clop of hooves. Does that change things? Clara forced herself to ask. Do you want me to leave? No. Jesse's answer came fast, almost fierce. Whatever she knows, whatever she's planning to spread around it, doesn't change anything. You told me the truth. That's all that matters. But your daughters are sitting right here. Rosie's voice cut in from behind. And we don't care what that horrible woman says. Right, Lily? A small whisper. Right. Clara turned to look at them, these two small girls who had every reason to distrust her and somehow didn't. Lily's eyes were wide and worried. Rosie's were fierce protective, directed at Clara for the first time. Thank you, Clara said quietly. Both of you. Rosie shrugged, looking away. We don't like her either. She came to the funeral and told Papa he should have taken better care of Mama. I wanted to hit her. You shouldn't hit people. I know. That's why I didn't. A pause. But I thought about it really hard. Despite everything, Clara felt her lips twitch. Fair enough. The days that followed were tense with waiting. Clara went about her work, cooking, cleaning, managing supplies, but she felt the weight of Mrs. Whitmore's threat hanging over everything. She caught people in town looking at her differently now, whispers cutting off when she walked by. Tomas noticed. Of course he did. The old vaquero noticed everything. "You carry a heavy burden, Señorita Clara," he said one evening, helping her stack firewood beside the kitchen door. "I see it in your shoulders." "I'm fine." "You are strong, but strength alone is not enough." He set down an armful of logs. "When I first came to this country, people looked at me the way they look at you now, like I did not belong, like I was less than them. How did you survive it?" "I found people who saw me truly. El Patron, Mr. Callahan's father, he hired me when no one else would. He judged me by my work, not by my skin." Tomas smiled, weathered lines creasing his face. "This family has always been like that. They see what is real, not what others say." "I hope you're right." "I know I am right." He picked up another log. "The boy Mr. Jesse, he has his father's eyes. When he looks at you, he sees truth. That is why Mrs. Whitmore is afraid." "Afraid of me." "Of what you represent." Tomas's voice was quiet. "A woman who does not break under judgment. A woman who might be exactly what this family needs. She cannot control that, and it frightens her." Before Clara could respond, the kitchen door banged open. Lily stood there, her face streaked with tears. "Miss Clara, come quick, Rosie's having the nightmare and Papa isn't here and she won't stop screaming." Clara ran. The upstairs was dark, lit only by the glow from a single lamp in the girls' shared room. Clara could hear it before she reached the door. Ragged, wordless screams that seemed to tear themselves from a small throat. Rosie was tangled in her blankets, eyes wide open, but seeing nothing, her body thrashing as if fighting off invisible attackers. Lily stood in the corner, crying, clearly terrified. "Lily, go downstairs. Find Tomas. Tell him to find your father." "But—" "Go, now!" Lily fled. Clara moved to the bed, careful not to touch Rosie. Yet she'd seen night terrors before, knew that sudden contact could make them worse. "Rosie! Rosie, can you hear me? You're safe. You're in your room. Nothing can hurt you here." The screaming continued, wordless and awful. "Rosie, I need you to listen to my voice. You're having a dream. It's not real. Your mama loved you so much, and she would want you to wake up now." Something shifted in the girl's wild eyes. The screaming stopped, replaced by desperate, gasping breaths. "There you go. That's it. Keep breathing." Clara sat on the edge of the bed, still not touching. "You're safe. I'm right here." "Mama." Rosie's voice was tiny, broken. "No, sweetheart. It's Clara. Miss Clara." Rosie blinked, and suddenly she was present, really present, staring at Clara with dawning horror. I saw—" "You had a nightmare. That's all it was." "It wasn't." Rosie's face crumpled. "I see it every time I close my eyes. The blood. There was so much blood. And Mama was holding my hand and she said, 'Take care of Lily.' And then she stopped. She stopped being Mama. Her eyes were still open, but she wasn't there anymore." Clara's heart shattered. This child, this 7-year-old girl, had been carrying the weight of her mother's death alone for 3 years. "Can I hold you?" Clara asked softly. "Would that be okay?" Rosie hesitated. The fierce, defensive girl who pushed everyone away warred with the terrified child who desperately needed comfort. Then she nodded. Clara gathered her up, blankets and all, and held her tight. Rosie was rigid at first, every muscle tense, but slowly, so slowly, she softened. Her small body began to shake with sobs she'd been holding back for 3 years. "I was supposed to protect her." Rosie wept. "She told me to take care of Lily. That was my job. But I couldn't take care of her. I couldn't even take care of myself. And everyone left, all the cooks, all the people who were supposed to help. They all left because we're broken. We're too broken to fix." "You are not broken." Clara's voice was fierce. "You are the strongest little girl I've ever met. What happened to your mama wasn't your fault. None of it was your fault. Then why does it hurt so much? Because you loved her. And losing someone you love is the hardest thing in the world." Clara pressed her lips to Rosie's hair. "But you don't have to carry it alone anymore. I'm here. Your papa's here. Lily's here. We're not going anywhere. Promise." The word hung in the air, a test, a plea, a desperate hope. Clara knew she shouldn't make promises. She'd spent 2 years learning not to. But looking down at this broken child who had finally let someone in, she found she couldn't do anything else. "I promise." Footsteps thundered up the stairs. Jesse burst into the room, his face white with fear, and stopped dead when he saw them. Rosie curled in Clara's arms, tears still wet on her cheeks, but calm. Present. Not screaming. "Papa?" Rosie's voice was exhausted. "I had the dream again." Jesse crossed the room in 3 strides and gathered both of them in his arms. Rosie and Clara, too. All of them tangled together in a way that should have been awkward, but somehow wasn't. "I'm here," he said, his voice rough. "I'm here now. Miss Clara helped me." Rosie's words were muffled against his chest. "She made the pictures go away." Over the girl's head, Jesse's eyes met Clara's. Something passed between them. Gratitude, wonder, and something deeper that neither of them was ready to name. "Thank you," he whispered. Clara shook her head slightly. She did the hard part. She let someone in. They stayed like that for a long moment, the 4 of them, because Lily had crept back upstairs at some point, and she was there too, pressed against her sister's side, her small hand gripping Clara's sleeve. A family, Clara thought. This is what a family feels like. And for the first time since Philadelphia, she stopped running long enough to feel it. The next morning, everything was different. Rosie came to breakfast voluntarily sitting at the table without argument. She didn't talk much, but she didn't glare either. And when Clara set a plate of eggs in front of her, she said something she'd never said before. "Thank you." 2 small words. They shouldn't have meant so much, but they did. Lily beamed across the table. Jesse's eyes softened. Even Tomas, coming in from the cold, noticed the shift in the room. "Ah," he said, settling into his usual seat. "The storm has passed." Maybe Clara thought. Or maybe they were just in the eye of it, waiting for the next wave to hit. She didn't have to wait long. The letter arrived that afternoon, delivered by a young man from town, who handed it over without meeting Clara's eyes. The envelope was heavy, formal, and addressed to Jesse Callahan in elegant script. Jesse read it at the kitchen table, his expression darkening with every line. "What is it?" Clara asked. He handed her the letter without speaking. It was from Mrs. Whitmore. Formal, polite, and absolutely devastating. She had written to contacts in Philadelphia. She had received confirmation of Clara's history, the trial, the accusations, the scandal that had destroyed her life. She felt it was her Christian duty to inform Mr. Callahan of the danger he was exposing his children to by employing a woman of such questionable character. The letter concluded with a barely veiled threat. If Jesse did not dismiss Miss Bennett immediately, Mrs. Whitmore would be forced to share her findings with the entire community. For the children's sake, of course. Clara set the letter down carefully. Her hands were shaking. "I'll pack tonight." "Like hell you will." She looked up, startled by the fury in Jesse's voice. "This isn't a request, Miss Clara. It's a declaration of war." He grabbed the letter and crumpled it in his fist. "Prudence Whitmore has bullied this town for 20 years. She destroyed Margaret's reputation when we first married, said she wasn't good enough for the Callahan name. She tried to buy our land when my father died, and when I wouldn't sell, she spread rumors about my finances until half the town wouldn't do business with me. But she knows everything. She knows what someone told her, gossip dressed up as fact." Jesse stepped closer, his eyes blazing. "I don't care about Philadelphia. I don't care about trials or accusations or whatever happened before you walked into my kitchen. I care about what I've seen with my own eyes. A woman who works harder than anyone I've ever met. A woman who got my daughters to eat at a table for the first time in 3 years. A woman who held my child through the worst night of her life and didn't run away. Jesse, I'm not letting you go. His voice cracked. Not for Prudence Whitmore, not for anyone. You're part of this family now, whether you meant to be or not. Clara stared at him, this rough, broken man who had lost so much and still had the courage to fight. She'll destroy your reputation. Already tried, didn't work. She'll turn the town against you. Half of them are scared of her, the other half are tired of her. Maybe it's time someone showed them they don't have to be afraid. And if you're wrong... Jesse reached out and took her hands. His grip was rough, calloused, warm. Then we'll face it together. As a family. From the doorway, a small voice spoke up. Does that mean Miss Clara gets to stay? They turned to find both twins standing there. Lily hopeful, Rosie guarded but listening. Yes. Jesse didn't take his eyes off Clara. Miss Clara stays. Lily let out a squeal of joy and threw herself at Clara's legs. But it was Rosie who surprised them all. She walked forward slowly, deliberately, and took Clara's hand. Good, she said quietly, because I wasn't done teaching you how to braid hair properly. You're still terrible at it. And despite everything, the letter, the threat, the storm that was coming, Clara laughed. For the first time in 2 years, she laughed like she meant it. The peace lasted exactly 4 days. Clara was kneading bread when she heard the wagon wheels. Not Jesse he'd left for the north pasture before dawn. Not the supply delivery that wasn't due until Thursday. She wiped her hands and moved to the window. 3 wagons. Maybe 15 people. All heading straight for the Callahan ranch. Miss Clara? Lily appeared at her elbow, her small face worried. Who are all those people? I don't know, sweetheart. Go upstairs and find your sister. Stay there until I come get you. But, now Lily, please. The girl ran. Clara untied her apron, hung it on the hook, and walked to the front door. Her heart was hammering, but she kept her steps steady. She recognized Mrs. Whitmore, immediately sitting in the lead wagon like a queen surveying her kingdom. Cornelius Whitmore sat beside her, looking uncomfortable. Behind them came other faces Clara knew from Town Jenkins from the general store, the preacher, several women she'd seen whispering in corners. And one face she didn't know. A young woman, maybe 25, with honey-colored hair and a practiced smile. Clara stepped onto the porch and waited. Mrs. Whitmore descended from the wagon with the help of her husband, arranging her skirts with deliberate care. The others gathered behind her, a wall of judgment and suspicion. Miss Bennet. Mrs. Whitmore's voice carried across the cold air. We've come to speak with Mr. Callahan. He's not here. Then we'll wait. You're welcome to wait in town. This is private property. Mrs. Whitmore's smile didn't waver. I'm sure Mr. Callahan won't mind. We're here on a matter of community concern, the welfare of those poor, motherless children. Clara's hands curled into fists at her sides. The children are fine. They're well-fed, well-cared for, and happy. Happy. The young woman stepped forward, her smile sharpening. Is that what you call it? I've heard those girls have been through 4 cooks in 3 years. That the oldest one has night terrors so severe she screams until dawn. That their father works himself to death because he can't face being in the house where his wife died. And who are you? Amelia Whitmore. Prudence is my mother. The young woman tilted her head, assessing. I grew up with Jesse Callahan. We were sweethearts once before he married Margaret. Mother always said he made a mistake choosing a woman who wasn't strong enough for ranch life. The implication hung in the air, ugly and unmistakable. Margaret Callahan died in childbirth, Clara said quietly. That's not weakness. That's tragedy. Is it? Amelia's eyes narrowed. Or is it what happens when a man works too hard and pays too little attention to his family, when he leaves his wife alone with 2 small children and another on the way. You don't know what you're talking about. I know what everyone knows. Amelia stepped closer, lowering her voice. I know those girls need a proper mother, someone from a good family with a good reputation, not a woman who was tried for poisoning a child in Philadelphia. Clara's blood went cold. That's not. We have the court records, Miss Bennet. Mrs. Whitmore's voice cut through like a knife. My husband's contacts were very thorough. You were employed as a governess for the Ashford family. Their youngest child, a boy of 4, became violently ill after consuming tea you prepared. You were arrested, tried, and acquitted. Barely. Mrs. Whitmore's smile was triumphant. The jury was divided. The judge expressed concerns about insufficient evidence rather than actual innocence. The Ashford family chose not to pursue further charges only because they wanted to avoid scandal. The child recovered. He was never in real danger. The illness was caused by spoiled milk in the kitchen milk that I didn't even know was there. The family needed someone to blame, and I was convenient. That's your version. Mrs. Whitmore turned to address the crowd. But can we really trust the word of a woman who fled Philadelphia in the middle of the night, who's been moving from town to town, never staying long enough for the truth to catch up with her? I didn't flee. I left because no one would hire me, because people like you made sure my name was ruined. People like me simply tell the truth. Mrs. Whitmore's eyes glittered. And the truth is, Mr. Callahan is harboring a dangerous woman in his home. A woman who has access to his vulnerable children every single day. A woman who prepares their food, puts them to bed, is left alone with them for hours at a time. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Clara saw doubt on faces that had been neutral, fear on faces that had been kind. This is ridiculous. Her voice came out stronger than she felt. I would never hurt those girls. I love... She stopped. The word had slipped out before she could catch it. Mrs. Whitmore pounced. You love them. After only a few weeks. How touching, and how convenient for a woman with nowhere else to go. That's enough. The voice came from behind Clara. She turned to see Tomas on the porch, his weathered face hard with anger. You come to this ranch with your accusations and your gossip, but you do not know this woman. I know her. I have watched her work from before dawn until after dark. I have seen her with those children, patient, kind, gentle. She is not what you say. And who are you to judge? Amelia's voice dripped contempt. A Mexican hired hand. Your opinion hardly matters. My opinion matters to Mr. Callahan, and it should matter to you, señorita, because I have worked this land for 30 years. I knew Jesse's father. I knew his mother. I was here when Margaret died, and I held those little girls while they cried for their mama. Tomas stepped forward, his eyes blazing. Where were you? Where was your mother, not here, not helping, just waiting for tragedy so you could swoop in and take what you wanted? Amelia's face flushed red. How dare you? I dare because it is true. Tomas turned to the crowd. You want to know about Miss Clara. She saved one of my men when he was injured in a storm. She has brought more peace to this house in 1 month than we have known in 3 years, and she has never done anything to harm those children. Pretty words from a loyal servant. Mrs. Whitmore's voice was ice. But they change nothing. We're here to protect those girls, and we won't leave until... Until what? Jesse's voice cut through the morning air like a gunshot. Clara spun to see him riding in from the north pasture, his face dark with fury. Behind him came the rest of the ranch hands, forming a wall of solid muscle and barely contained anger. He dismounted before his horse, fully stopped, striding toward the crowd with dangerous purpose. What is the meaning of this, Mr. Callahan? Mrs. Whitmore's composure slipped for just a moment before she recovered. We're here as concerned members of the community. The woman you've employed is my employee, on my property, which you're currently trespassing on. Jesse, please. Amelia stepped forward, her voice softening. We're only trying to help. Those girls have been through so much. They deserve someone who can truly care for them. Someone who isn't carrying the weight of criminal accusations. The accusations were false. She was acquitted. The jury was divided. I don't care if the jury did a square dance and sang hymns. Jesse's voice rose. Clara Bennett has done more for my daughters in 1 month than anyone in this town has done in 3 years. She got Rosie to talk about her nightmares. She got Lily to smile again. She got both of them to eat at my table like a family. That doesn't change what she is, Mrs. Whitmore snapped. And what exactly is she? A woman who was falsely accused and has been running from lies ever since. Jesse stepped closer to Clara, close enough that their shoulders nearly touched. I know exactly what that feels like. You made sure of it, Prudence. After Margaret died, you told everyone who would listen that I was a neglectful husband, that I worked too hard, that I should have done more. I only stated facts. You stated opinions dressed up as facts, same as you're doing now. Jesse's hand found Clara's gripping tight. And I'm done letting you control the narrative. Clara stays. Anyone who has a problem with that can take it up with me directly. Silence fell over the yard. The crowd shifted uncomfortably, suddenly aware that they'd chosen the wrong side. Cornelius Whitmore cleared his throat. Perhaps we should discuss this privately. There's nothing to discuss. Jesse's voice was final. You've made your accusations. I've heard them. My answer is no. Now get off my land. Mrs. Whitmore's face contorted with rage. You'll regret this, Jesse Callahan. When the truth comes out, the truth came out 3 years ago when you spread lies about my wife and no one stood up to you. The truth came out 2 weeks ago when you started digging into Clara's past instead of minding your own business. And the truth is coming out right now. Jesse turned to face the crowd. You all know Prudence Whitmore. You know how she operates. She's been running this town through fear and gossip for 20 years. Well, I'm not afraid anymore, and neither should you be. More murmurs. Some people began edging toward their wagons, clearly wanting no part of what was happening. This isn't over, Mrs. Whitmore hissed. Yes, it is. Jesse pointed toward the road. Leave. Now. Before I forget that I was raised to respect my elders. The crowd dispersed slowly, reluctantly. Mrs. Whitmore climbed back into her wagon with rigid dignity, Amelia close behind. Cornelius shot one last apologetic look toward Jesse before following his wife. Clara watched them go, her hand still gripped in Jesse's, her heart pounding so hard she could feel it in her throat. Are you all right? Jesse's voice was soft now, all the fury drained out of it. I don't know. She turned to face him. You shouldn't have done that. You've made an enemy for life. She was already my enemy. Now she's just an honest one. He reached up and touched her face, his thumb brushing her cheek. Are you crying? Clara hadn't realized she was. She wiped at her eyes impatiently. I'm fine. I just no one's ever defended you. Believed me. Actually believed me without needing proof or evidence or, I don't need proof. Jesse's voice was rough. I need what I can see with my own eyes, and what I see is a woman who's been carrying the weight of other people's lies for too long. Papa. They turned to find both twins standing on the porch. Rosie's face was pale, her arms wrapped protectively around Lily. We heard yelling. Lily was scared. I wasn't scared, Lily protested, though her voice wobbled. I was just concerned. Jesse released Clara's hand and moved to his daughters, crouching down to their level. Everything's fine. Just some people who came to cause trouble. They're gone now. Mrs. Whitmore. Rosie's voice hardened. She's the one who said mean things to Miss Clara before. Yes. What did she want? Jesse hesitated. Clara stepped forward, her voice gentle. She wanted your papa to send me away. Both girls' faces crumpled with identical horror. No. Lily threw herself at Clara's legs. You can't go. You promised. I'm not going anywhere, sweetheart. Your papa made sure of that. Rosie hung back, her expression guarded. But her eyes, those dark, too old eyes, held something new. Hope, maybe, or the beginning of trust. She'll come back, Rosie said quietly. Mrs. Whitmore never gives up. She'll find another way to hurt you. Maybe. Clara held out her hand. But she'll have to go through all of us first. Rosie stared at the offered hand for a long moment. Then slowly she took it. All of us, she repeated. Together. The days that followed were fragile, precious things. Clara threw herself into preparing for Christmas, which was only 2 weeks away. The twins helped her bake cookies, string popcorn, make decorations from scraps of ribbon and paper. Jesse watched from doorways, his expression soft in ways Clara was learning to recognize. He found excuses to be in the kitchen more often now, checking supplies, warming his hands by the stove, bringing in firewood she hadn't asked for. You don't have to keep finding reasons, Clara said one evening after the girls had gone to bed. You can just stay. He looked at her, and something shifted in his eyes. Can I? This is your house. That's not what I'm asking. Clara's breath caught. They were standing close, too close, and she could smell the cold air on his clothes, the honest sweat of hard work, something underneath that was just him. Jesse, I know it's too soon. I know you've only been here a month. But Clara? He stopped, his jaw working. I haven't felt like this in a long time, maybe ever, and I need you to know that before... He was interrupted by a scream from upstairs. They both ran. Clara reached the girls' room first, throwing open the door to find Lily sitting up in bed, her face white with terror, while Rosie crouched beside her, gripping her sister's hands. Lily, what happened? There was someone outside. Lily's voice was shrill. At the window. A face. I saw a face. Jesse was already moving to the window, his hand on the pistol at his hip. He looked out into the darkness, then cursed under his breath. Stay here. Lock the door behind me. Jesse. But he was already gone, his boots pounding down the stairs. Clara gathered both girls onto one bed, holding them close while they waited. The minutes stretched like hours. Lily cried quietly against Clara's shoulder. Rosie sat rigid, her eyes fixed on the door, ready to fight whatever came through it. Finally, footsteps on the stairs. Clara tensed. It's me. Jesse's voice came through the door. Open up. She unlocked it to find him standing there, his face grim. Someone was out there. Fresh tracks in the snow leading to and from the window. They were watching the house. Who? I don't know, but I have a guess. His eyes were hard. Whitmore's man. She's not giving up. What do we do? Tonight, nothing. I'll have Tomas and the boys take shifts watching the house. Jesse looked past her to his daughters. Tomorrow, I'm going to town. This ends now. He didn't let Clara come with him. He left before dawn, taking Tomas and 2 other hands, leaving strict instructions that no one was to leave the house until he returned. Clara tried to keep the girls occupied, but the tension was unbearable. Lily cried on and off all morning, jumping at every sound. Rosie retreated into silence, her face pale and closed. By noon, Clara was pacing the kitchen, watching the road, willing Jesse to appear. He didn't come. By 3 o'clock, she was terrified. By 5, when the sun began to set, and there was still no sign of the wagon, she was preparing for the worst. Something's wrong. Rosie's voice came from behind her, flat and certain. Something happened to Papa. We don't know that. Yes, we do. The girl's eyes were too old, too knowing. Bad things happen. People don't come back. That's just how it is. Before Clara could respond, the sound of hoofbeats echoed through the evening air. She ran to the window, her heart in her throat. Jesse, alone on horseback, riding fast. She was out the door before she could think meeting him as he dismounted. What happened? Where are the others? Town. They're fine. Jesse's face was pale, his jaw tight. Clara, I need you to listen to me. What is it? Whitmore. He's calling in the loan on the ranch. Says we're behind on payments, which is a lie, but he has the paperwork to prove otherwise. I have 30 days to pay in full, or he takes everything. The world tilted. That's not possible. He's the banker. He can make anything possible. Jesse gripped her arms, his eyes wild. But that's not the worst part. He's also filed a petition with the territorial judge for custody of the girls. Clara's blood turned to ice. What? He's claiming I'm an unfit father, that I've exposed my children to a dangerous woman, that they'd be better off in the care of a stable, respectable family. Jesse's voice cracked. His family, with Amelia as their new mother. No. Clara shook her head, her whole body trembling. No, they can't. They can try. Jesse pulled her close, pressing his forehead to hers. But I'm not letting them take my girls. And I'm not letting them take you either. What are you going to do? Whatever I have to. His eyes met hers, fierce and desperate. I've already lost one woman I loved. I'm not losing another. Clara's heart stopped. Jesse, I know it's not the right time. I know everything's falling apart. But I need you to know, Clara. Whatever happens next, I love you. I've loved you since you stood on my porch and refused to let me intimidate you. And if we survive this, if we make it through... When? Clara whispered. When we make it through. He kissed her then. Not gentle, not careful. Desperate and fierce and full of everything they hadn't said. From the window above, two small faces watched. And for the first time in 3 years, Rosie smiled. But the smile faded when she looked past her father and Clara, past the barn and the corrals to the road beyond. More riders were coming, and they weren't alone. The riders came fast, kicking up snow and ice as they tore down the road toward the ranch. Clara counted 6, maybe 7, their faces hidden by the dying light. Jesse pushed her behind him, his hand already on his pistol. Get the girls inside. Lock the door. Don't open it for anyone but me. Jesse. Go. Now. Clara ran. She grabbed both twins from the window, ignoring their protests, and herded them toward the kitchen. What's happening? Lily's voice was high with fear. Who are those people? I don't know yet, but we're going to stay safe until your papa handles it. I want to help. Rosie tried to pull away. Papa might need... Your papa needs to know you're protected. That's how you help him. Clara's voice was firm but gentle. Please, Rosie, trust me. Something in her tone must have reached the girl. Rosie stopped struggling and took Lily's hand. Fine. But if something happens, nothing's going to happen. I promise. She pushed them toward her room off the kitchen, the one with the lock on the inside, and positioned herself by the door, listening. Voices outside. Jesse's hard and cold. Then another voice, unfamiliar but authoritative. Mr. Callahan, I'm Sheriff Warren from the Territorial Office. I need you to step aside. On what grounds? I have a warrant for the removal of your children pending a custody hearing. They're to be placed in temporary care. Like hell they are. Sir, I understand this is difficult, but if you interfere with a lawful order... Lawful. Jesse's voice cracked like a whip. A warrant signed by a judge who owes Cornelius Whitmore money. A hearing scheduled without my knowledge. You call that lawful? A pause. Then the sheriff's voice quieter now. I'm just following orders, Callahan. I don't like this any more than you do. Then don't do it. I don't have a choice. There's always a choice. Jesse's voice dropped dangerous. And if you try to take my daughters, you'll find out exactly how far I'm willing to go to protect them. Clara's blood ran cold. She pressed her ear closer to the door. "Papa's going to fight them." Rosie's voice came from behind her, flat and certain. "He won't let them take us." "No, he won't." Clara turned to face the twins. "But fighting isn't always the answer. Sometimes we have to be smart instead of strong." "What do you mean?" Clara's mind raced. The sheriff had a warrant, legal authority. If Jesse resisted, he'd be arrested, and then there would be no one to protect the girls at all. "Stay here," she said. "Lock the door behind me. Don't open it for anyone except me or your papa." "Where are you going?" "To try something." Before she could second-guess herself, Clara slipped out the back door and circled around the house. The cold bit through her dress, but she barely noticed. All her focus was on the confrontation happening in the front yard. She counted 7 men, the sheriff and 2 deputies in front. 4 others hanging back, Whitmore's men, probably there to ensure the job got done. Jesse stood alone, his hand on his pistol, his body positioned between the riders and his home. "Sheriff Warren?" Clara's voice rang out clear in the cold air. "May I have a word?" Every head turned toward her. Jesse's face flickered with surprise, then fear. "Clara, get back inside." "No, me." She walked forward, keeping her hands visible, her steps steady. "Sheriff, I understand you have a warrant for the children. May I see it?" The sheriff hesitated, clearly thrown by her composure. He was a man in his 50s, weathered and tired-looking, with eyes that held more doubt than conviction. "Ma'am, this is official business. I'm also aware that warrants require specific grounds for issuance. I'd like to know what those grounds are." "Clara," Jesse's voice was a warning. "Let me handle this." She didn't look at him. All her focus was on the sheriff. "The warrant, please." After a long moment, the sheriff reached into his coat and produced a folded document. Clara took it, her hands steady, despite the pounding of her heart. She read quickly, her eyes scanning the legal language. Then she looked up. "This warrant claims that Mr. Callahan has exposed his children to a dangerous individual, namely me. It cites my alleged criminal history as grounds for removal." "That's correct." "Then you should know that the criminal charges referenced here were dismissed. I was acquitted by a jury in Philadelphia 2 years ago." Clara kept her voice calm. "The warrant is based on false information." "That's for the court to decide." "No. It's for you to decide, right now." Clara stepped closer. "You're about to tear 2 little girls away from their father, based on accusations that have already been proven false. Is that the kind of lawman you want to be?" The sheriff's jaw tightened. "I have my orders." "Orders from whom? Judge Patterson?" Clara saw the flicker in his eyes. "I thought so. The same Judge Patterson who owes Cornelius Whitmore $6,000 in gambling debts." Silence fell over the yard. Even Whitmore's men shifted uncomfortably. "How do you know that?" The sheriff's voice was sharp. "Because I pay attention." Clara held up the warrant. "This document is signed by a judge who's financially compromised. The accusations against me come from a woman who's been trying to destroy this family for years. And you're standing here in the freezing cold about to traumatize 2 innocent children because someone told you to. The law is the law. The law is supposed to protect people, not punish them for someone else's grudge." Clara's voice rose. "Those girls lost their mother 3 years ago. They've been through hell. And now you want to rip them away from their father, the only family they have left, because Prudence Whitmore can't stand that Jesse Callahan won't marry her daughter." A murmur ran through the assembled men. Even Whitmore's people looked uncertain. "Is that true?" One of the deputies turned to the sheriff. "Warren, if this is some kind of personal vendetta—" "I don't know." The sheriff looked genuinely shaken. "I just know I got a warrant from a judge and orders to execute it." "And now you know more." Jesse stepped forward, standing beside Clara. "You know the warrant is based on lies. You know the judge who signed it is compromised. And you know that if you take my daughters, you'll be doing Prudence Whitmore's dirty work, not enforcing the law." The silence stretched tight as a wire. Then the sheriff folded the warrant and put it back in his coat. I'm going to need to verify some of this before I proceed. Warren. One of Whitmore's men started forward. Back off, Perkins. The sheriff's voice was hard. I said I need to verify. That means we're leaving. Tonight. Mrs. Whitmore won't like this. Mrs. Whitmore isn't paying my salary. The sheriff mounted his horse, looking down at Jesse and Clara with something that might have been respect. You've got a week. Use it well. He turned and rode off, his deputies following. After a moment's hesitation, Whitmore's men went to casting dark looks over their shoulders. Clara watched until they disappeared into the darkness. Then her knees buckled. Jesse caught her before she hit the ground. Easy. I've got you. His voice was rough with emotion. That was the bravest thing I've ever seen. It was stupid. Clara's teeth were chattering now. I could have made everything worse. You didn't. You bought us time. Jesse pulled her close, wrapping his coat around both of them. How did you know about the judge, about the gambling debts? I didn't. I guessed. Clara laughed weakly. Small towns are the same everywhere. There's always someone who owes money to the banker. You magnificent, terrifying woman. She looked up at him, and despite everything, the fear, the cold, the impossible odds, she smiled. Papa, Miss Clara. The back door burst open, and both twins came running. They slammed into Jesse and Clara, small arms wrapping around legs and waists, holding on tight. We saw from the window. Rosie's voice was fierce. Miss Clara made them go away. She was so brave, Lily added. Like a hero in a book. She is a hero. Jesse's voice was thick. Our hero. They stood there in the cold, the four of them wrapped together, holding on as if the world might try to tear them apart at any moment. Because it would. They all knew it. This wasn't over. It was barely beginning. But for now, for this moment, they were together. And that was enough. The next morning brought Dr. Nellie Huang to their door. Clara had met her briefly in town, a Chinese-American woman in her 30s, trained in San Francisco, the only doctor within 50 miles. She arrived in a small buggy, her medical bag clutched to her chest, her face set with determination. I heard what happened last night, she said without preamble. Half the town is talking about how the Callahan cook faced down Sheriff Warren. News travels fast. Bad news travels faster. Dr. Huang stepped inside, rubbing warmth into her hands. I came because I have information. And because I owe you. Owe me. When I first arrived in Bitter Creek, Prudence Whitmore tried to run me out, said the town didn't need a foreign doctor. The doctor's voice was bitter. She spread rumors about my qualifications, questioned my training. Half my potential patients wouldn't see me for the first year. What changed? Nothing changed. I just refused to leave. Dr. Huang smiled grimly. And eventually people got sick enough that they had no choice. But I've never forgotten what she did. And I've been waiting for a chance to return the favor. She opened her medical bag and pulled out a bundle of papers. These are correspondence records from the Territorial Medical Board. I've served on their review committee for 2 years. She spread the papers on the kitchen table. Last month I was asked to review a complaint filed against a doctor in Philadelphia, a Dr. Marcus Webb. Clara's blood went cold. That's the Ashford's family physician. I know. He's the one who testified against you at your trial. Dr. Huang's eyes met hers. He's also the one who falsified his testimony. What? The child's illness wasn't caused by poisoning. It was caused by contaminated well water, something Dr. Webb knew about but chose not to disclose because the Ashford family was paying him to point the finger elsewhere. Dr. Huang pushed the papers toward Clara. It's all here. Medical records, water testing results, correspondence between Webb and the Ashford patriarch. He lied on the stand, and he did it for money. Clara's hands trembled as she picked up the papers. 2 years of running. 2 years of hiding. 2 years of being called a poisoner, a criminal, a danger to children. And it had all been a lie. Why are you telling me this? Because Prudence Whitmore is using your past to destroy you. And if we can prove that past was manufactured, Dr. Huang leaned forward. You don't just get your name back, Clara. You get the power to fight. How do we prove it? Webb is in Philadelphia. We're here. We send for his testimony. We petition the territorial court to review your case. We make enough noise that people have to listen. Dr. Huang stood. I've already drafted the petition. I just need your signature. Clara looked at the papers, then at Jesse, who had been standing silently in the doorway. Do it, he said quietly. Whatever it takes. She signed. The week that followed was a blur of activity. Dr. Huang sent telegrams to Philadelphia to the territorial court to anyone who might listen. Clara answered questions, provided details, dredged up memories she'd tried to bury. The twins watched it all with wide eyes, understanding something important was happening without grasping exactly what. Are you going to prove that you didn't do the bad thing? Lily asked one evening, curled up beside Clara on the sofa. I'm going to try, sweetheart. And then Mrs. Whitmore won't be able to hurt us anymore. That's the hope. Rosie, sitting on Clara's other side, was quiet for a long moment. Then, what if it doesn't work? Clara pulled both girls closer. Then we'll find another way. Together. Promise. Promise. It was 3 days before Christmas when the telegram arrived. Jessie was in the barn when the messenger came. Clara signed for the envelope, her heart pounding, and tore it open with shaking hands. She read it once, twice, 3 times. Then she sat down heavily, the paper falling from her nerveless fingers. Miss Clara. Rosie appeared in the doorway. What's wrong? Nothing's wrong. Clara's voice came out strange, thick with tears she couldn't quite contain. Nothing's wrong at all. Then why are you crying? Because sometimes... Clara took a shuddering breath. Sometimes good things happen, and you don't know how to feel anything except grateful. The telegram was from the territorial court. The petition had been received. Dr. Webb's records had been subpoenaed, and pending further review, all proceedings related to Clara Bennett's alleged criminal history were suspended indefinitely. It wasn't complete exoneration. Not yet. But it was a start. It was hope. Jessie found her still sitting there 20 minutes later, the telegram clutched to her chest like a talisman. What happened? She handed him the paper, watched his face as he read it. My God! His voice was hoarse. Clara, this is... I know. You're free, or you will be. I know. She finally let the tears fall. I didn't think, I never imagined. He pulled her into his arms, holding her tight while she sobbed against his chest. All the fear, all the running, all the years of hiding and hoping, and never quite believing it all, came pouring out. You deserve this, Jessie murmured against her hair. You deserve everything good. I didn't think I deserved anything. Then you weren't paying attention. He pulled back, cupping her face in his hands. Clara Bennett, you are the strongest, bravest, most stubborn woman I've ever known. You walked into my life with a carpet bag and a secret, and you changed everything. My daughters, my house, my heart. Jessie, I love you. He said it clearly, deliberately, as if making sure every word landed. I've loved you for weeks, and I'm tired of pretending otherwise. I love you too. The words came easier than she'd expected. I think I've loved you since you handed me a coffee pot and told me the door locks from the inside. He laughed, a real laugh full of joy. That's when you fell in love with me. That's when I knew I could trust you. The love came later. She smiled through her tears. Somewhere between the night terrors and the showdowns with sheriffs. Speaking of which, Jessie's expression sobered. This helps with the custody case, but we still have the bank loan. Whitmore's not going to give up just because his wife's accusations fell apart. How much do you owe? On paper, nothing. In reality, $5,000 that he's manufactured out of thin air. Can you pay it? Not in 30 days. Not without selling off half the herd, and even then. Jessie shook his head. He's got me cornered. That's what he does. He finds the weakness, and he squeezes until there's nothing left. Clara's mind raced. There had to be something. Some angle they hadn't considered. "The railroad," she said suddenly. "What? The railroad? It's coming through in 2 years. That's why Whitmore wants your land. It's going to be worth 10 times what it is now." "I know that, but knowing doesn't help me pay the loan." "No, but it might help you find investors who will." Clara grabbed his arm. "Think about it. If Whitmore knows the railroad is coming, other people know too. People with money. People who'd love to get in early on land speculation. I'm not selling my ranch. Not sell. Partner." Clara's eyes were bright. "You find someone who'll pay off the loan in exchange for a stake in the profits when the railroad comes through. You keep the land, they make money, and Whitmore loses his leverage." Jesse stared at her. "You just thought of that?" "I've been running for 2 years. You learn to think fast." "You magnificent, terrifying woman." He kissed her hard, urgent, full of hope. "I know exactly who to talk to." The meeting happened on Christmas Eve. Jesse rode to town at dawn and returned at noon with a man Clara didn't recognize. A tall, silver-haired gentleman in expensive clothes that looked out of place in Wyoming territory. "Clara, this is Marcus Chen, Agatha's husband." "Dr. Huang's husband." "The same." Marcus Chen shook her hand with a firm grip. "My wife has told me everything about your situation, Miss Bennett. I've been looking for an opportunity to invest in this region, and it seems I've found one." The negotiations took hours. Clara kept the twins occupied in the kitchen baking Christmas cookies, while the men talked in the front room. By the time the sun set, Marcus Chen had agreed to pay off Whitmore's falsified loan in exchange for a 20% stake in any profits from railroad development on Callahan land. "Cornelius is going to be furious," Chen said, signing the final papers. "He's been trying to corner the railroad speculation market for years." "Good." Jesse's voice was grim. "Let him be furious. It's time someone showed him he can't always get what he wants. This isn't just about business for me." Chen looked at Clara. "My wife spent her first year in this town being tormented by Prudence Whitmore. She almost gave up, almost left." His eyes softened. "Then she met a patient who needed her, a rancher's daughter with scarlet fever. She saved that child's life, and suddenly people started seeing her as a doctor instead of an outsider." "Who was the patient?" "I think you know." Chen smiled. "A little girl named Rosie Callahan." Clara's breath caught. "Nellie saved Rosie. 3 years ago, right after Margaret died." Jesse's voice was rough. "The girls got sick, both of them. Dr. Huang stayed with us for a week, barely sleeping, fighting to keep them alive. If it weren't for her..." He couldn't finish. He didn't have to. "That's why Nellie helped us," Clara whispered. "That's why she's been fighting for us." She never forgot what this family went through. Chen stood gathering his papers. "And neither did I. Consider this debt repaid, all of it." After he left, Clara and Jesse sat in silence, absorbing everything that had happened. "It's over," Clara said finally. "Isn't it? The bank part is. The custody hearing is in 3 days, but with Dr. Huang's testimony and the telegram from the territorial court." Jesse shook his head. "Mrs. Whitmore doesn't have a leg to stand on. She won't give up." "No, but she's lost her weapons." Jesse took Clara's hand. "The loan is paid. Your name is being cleared. The sheriff knows the truth. She can rage all she wants, but she can't hurt us anymore." "Papa." Lily's voice came from the kitchen doorway. "Are you and Miss Clara done talking?" "For now, sweetheart. Why?" "Because it's Christmas Eve." Lily's face was serious. "And Rosie says we should open one present tonight like Mama used to let us." Jesse's eyes went soft. "Your Mama did love Christmas Eve. Can we?" Rosie appeared behind her sister, trying to look casual but failing. "Please. I think we can manage that." Jesse stood, pulling Clara up with him. "But first I have something to ask, both of you." The twins exchanged glances. "What?" Jesse kept Clara's hand in his as he faced his daughters. You know how much I love you, and you know how much Miss Clara loves you. We know. Lily was practically vibrating with excitement. And we love her too. Good, because I'm going to ask her to stay. Forever. Jesse turned to Clara, his eyes bright. Clara Bennett, I know this isn't the most romantic proposal. I know we should wait until your name is fully cleared and the custody hearing is over and 100 other things are settled. But I'm tired of waiting. I've waited too long already. Clara's heart was pounding. Jesse, will you marry me? He said it simply, directly, without flourish. Will you be my wife? Will you be their mother? Before Clara could answer, two small bodies crashed into her legs. Say yes, Lily shrieked. Please say yes. We already picked you. Rosie's voice was fierce. We picked you the day you came. You're supposed to be our mama. We've been waiting forever for Papa to figure it out. Clara laughed through sudden tears. You've been waiting. We had a plan. Lily bounced on her toes. Rosie said if we were extra good and didn't scare you away, Papa would eventually realize he loved you. And he did. Our plan worked. You little schemers. Clara gathered them both close, looking up at Jesse over their heads. How am I supposed to say no to that? You're not. Jesse's smile was incandescent. That's the whole point. Then yes. Clara said it clearly, loudly, making sure everyone heard. Yes, I'll marry you. Yes, I'll be their mother. Yes to all of it. Lily screamed with joy. Rosie buried her face in Clara's skirt to hide her tears. And Jesse pulled all three of them into his arms, holding them together like he was never going to let go. Best Christmas present ever, he murmured. We haven't even opened the presents yet. Rosie pointed out, her voice muffled. Don't need to. Already got everything I want. They stood there in the warmth of the house, the fire crackling, the wind howling outside, and Clara realized she had finally stopped running. Not because she'd found a place to hide, because she'd found a place to belong. But 3 miles away, in the finest house in Bitter Creek, Prudence, Whitmore was reading a telegram of her own. And she was not finished yet. Christmas morning dawned cold and bright. Clara woke to the sound of small feet thundering down the stairs and Lily's voice shrieking with joy at the presents under the tree. For a moment, she forgot everything else. The custody hearing, Mrs. Whitmore's threats, the uncertainty that still hung over their future. For this moment, there was only warmth, family, home. Miss Clara! Lily burst into her room, her arms full of a new porcelain doll. Look what Santa brought, and Rosie got a real telescope, and Papa got new boots, and there's a present for you too. Clara sat up laughing. Give me a minute to get dressed. No time. Lily grabbed her hand and pulled. Papa says we're opening presents together. As a family. Come on. The word hit Clara like a physical blow. Family. She'd stopped believing she would ever have one. Jesse was waiting in the front room, Rosie already beside him, examining her telescope with intense concentration. When he saw Clara, his face softened into that smile she was learning to recognize, the one that meant home and safety and belonging. Merry Christmas, he said quietly. Merry Christmas. She sat beside him, and Lily immediately climbed into her lap. You shouldn't have... Open it. Jesse pressed a small wrapped box into her hands. Before Lily explodes from impatience. Clara unwrapped the paper, carefully aware of 3 sets of eyes watching her every move. Inside was a simple gold ring, thin and elegant, with a small sapphire that caught the morning light. It was my mother's, Jesse said. She would have wanted you to have it. Clara's vision blurred. Jesse, put it on. Lily bounced impatiently. I want to see it on your hand. With trembling fingers, Clara slid the ring onto her finger. It fit perfectly. Now you're really going to be our mama, Rosie said. Her voice was matter-of-fact, but her eyes were bright. Officially. Officially, Clara agreed, pulling both girls close. Forever and always. The moment shattered when hoofbeats sounded outside. Jesse was on his feet instantly, his hand going to the rifle above the fireplace. "Stay here. Jesse!" But he was already moving to the door. Clara gathered the twins behind her, shielding them with her body, her heart pounding. The door opened. Cold air rushed in. And then, Reverend Cotton. Jesse's voice was confused. "What are you doing here on Christmas morning? I need to speak with you." The preacher's voice was urgent. "It's about Mrs. Whitmore. She's planning something for the hearing tomorrow. Something that could destroy everything." "Tomorrow? The hearing is in 3 days." "Not anymore. She convinced Judge Patterson to move it up. The hearing is at 10 o'clock tomorrow morning." Reverend Cotton stepped inside, his face grave. "I'm sorry, Jesse. I only just found out. She's been working behind the scenes, calling in every favor she's owed." Clara's blood went cold. "What else does she have?" The Reverend hesitated. "A witness. Someone from Philadelphia who claims to have direct knowledge of what happened with the Ashford child." "That's impossible. Everyone who was involved—" "Not everyone." Reverend Cotton met her eyes. "Dr. Webb, the physician who testified against you. Mrs. Whitmore brought him here. He arrived on yesterday's train." The room spun. Clara gripped the back of a chair to steady herself. "No!" Her voice came out thin. "No, they can't. They can, and they will unless we find a way to stop them." The Reverend turned to Jesse. "I came because I believe in you, both of you. I've seen how those children have blossomed since Miss Bennet arrived. I've seen the change in this household, and I don't believe for a moment that she's the monster Mrs. Whitmore is painting her to be." "Then help us." Jesse's voice was hard. "Tell me what we can do." "Fight. With everything you have." Reverend Cotton's eyes burned with conviction. "The town is watching. Half of them are tired of living under Prudence Whitmore's thumb. If you stand up to her, if you show them she can be beaten, they'll stand with us. Some of them. Maybe enough." The Reverend moved toward the door. "The hearing is at the courthouse. Be there early, and be ready for anything." After he left, silence hung heavy over the room. "Papa?" Lily's voice was small. "What's going to happen?" Jesse knelt down, gathering both twins in his arms. "I don't know, sweetheart. But I promise you this, no one is taking you away from me. Not Mrs. Whitmore. Not anyone." "What about Miss Clara?" Rosie's voice was fierce. "They can't take her either. She's ours." "She's ours." Jesse met Clara's eyes over the children's heads. "And she always will be." The hours until the hearing felt endless. Clara tried to prepare to think of what she might say, but her mind kept circling back to Dr. Webb, the man who had destroyed her life with his lies, the man she'd hoped never to see again. And now he was here, in Bitter Creek, ready to finish what he'd started. "Stop!" Jesse's voice cut through her spiral. It was late, the twins finally asleep, and they sat together by the dying fire. "I can see you planning your escape." "I'm not." "You are. You're thinking that if you leave, this all goes away. That Webb's testimony won't matter if you're not here to defend against it." Clara looked away. "It would protect the girls. It would devastate them." Jesse reached out and took her hand. "Rosie already lost one mother. Lily has nightmares about being abandoned. If you leave—" "I know." Clara's voice broke. "I know what it would do to them. That's the only reason I'm still here." "The only reason—" She looked at him, then really looked, and saw the fear beneath his certainty. He was as terrified as she was terrified of losing everything, of watching his family torn apart again. "Not the only reason," she admitted. "I'm also staying because I love you, because I finally found something worth fighting for, and because I'm tired of running." Jesse pulled her close, pressing his lips to her hair. "Then we fight. Together. Whatever comes tomorrow." "Whatever comes," Clara repeated. "Together." The courthouse was packed. Clara had expected Mrs. Whitmore and her supporters. She hadn't expected half the town. They filed in through the cold morning, their faces curious, uncertain, watching. Some nodded to Jesse as he passed. Others looked away. The division was clear, those who feared Mrs. Whitmore and those who were finally brave enough to stand. Dr. Huang sat in the front row, her husband beside her. Tomas and the ranch hands filled the seats behind them, and scattered throughout the crowd, Clara recognized faces: Jenkins from the general store, the deputy who'd questioned Sheriff Warren, others she'd seen in town but never spoken to. They were here, watching, waiting to see what would happen. Mrs. Whitmore sat at the front of the courtroom, dressed in expensive black like a widow at a funeral. Amelia perched beside her, looking smug. And next to them, Dr. Marcus Webb. Clara's stomach dropped. He looked the same as she remembered, thin, pale, with watery blue eyes that avoided direct contact. The man who had looked her in the face and lied about what he knew. "Don't look at him." Jessie's voice was low in her ear. "He doesn't deserve your fear." "I'm not afraid." Clara lifted her chin. "I'm angry." "Good. Hold on to that." Judge Patterson took his seat, and the murmuring crowd went silent. He was a thin man with nervous eyes, and Clara noticed how they darted toward Mrs. Whitmore before settling anywhere else. "This hearing is convened to determine the welfare of the minor children Rosemary and Lillian Callahan," the judge began. "The petition before us alleges that their father, Jesse Callahan, has exposed them to an individual with a dangerous criminal history, rendering him unfit. Your Honor." Dr. Huang stood. "Before we proceed, I have evidence that directly impacts this case." "Dr. Huang, this is highly irregular. So is moving a hearing up by 3 days without notifying the respondent." Dr. Huang's voice was steel. "I have documentation proving that the criminal accusations against Clara Bennett were fabricated. Dr. Marcus Webb, the physician who testified against her in Philadelphia, falsified his testimony for payment." The crowd erupted. Judge Patterson banged his gavel. "Order, order. This is outrageous." Mrs. Whitmore was on her feet. "Your Honor, this woman is trying to derail legitimate proceedings. These proceedings are based on a lie." Dr. Huang held up a sheaf of papers. "I have correspondence between Dr. Webb and the Ashford family detailing their arrangement. I have medical records proving the child's illness was caused by contaminated well water, not poisoning. And I have—" "That's enough." Dr. Webb stood, his face white. "You can't prove any of that." "Can't I?" Dr. Huang smiled coldly. "Then perhaps you'd like to explain why you've been avoiding subpoenas from the Territorial Medical Board for the past month." Silence. Every eye in the courtroom was on Webb. I don't know what you're talking about." "Really? Then you won't mind if I read this telegram from the board received this morning, officially suspending your medical license pending investigation into perjury and fraud." The room exploded again. This time, even the gavel couldn't restore order. Clara watched it happen, as if from a great distance. The carefully constructed lies that had destroyed her life, crumbling in front of everyone. Dr. Webb backing toward the door. Mrs. Whitmore, her face twisted with fury. Amelia, looking genuinely shocked. "Order?" Judge Patterson's voice cracked. "There will be order, or I'll clear this courtroom." Slowly, the noise subsided. "Given this new evidence," the judge said carefully, "I'm inclined to delay proceedings until—" "No." Clara stood. Her voice rang clear through the courtroom. "No delays. Let's finish this now." Everyone stared at her. Jessie reached for her hand, but she stepped forward, away from the support, standing alone. "Mrs. Whitmore has accused me of being dangerous, of being a threat to those children." Clara's voice was steady. "So let's address that directly. Let everyone in this room hear the truth." "Miss Bennett." The judge looked uncertain. "I was a governess in Philadelphia. I cared for a child who became ill. A physician lied about the cause of that illness, and I was arrested, tried, and acquitted." Clara looked directly at Mrs. Whitmore. "Acquitted. A jury of 12 people heard all the evidence and determined that I was innocent." The jury was divided. The jury followed the law, which is more than you've done. Clara took another step forward. You've harassed this family for years. You spread lies about Margaret Callahan. You tried to steal this ranch. And when that didn't work, you came after me because I was an easy target. A woman alone with a questionable past. Someone you thought you could destroy. Mrs. Whitmore's face reddened. How dare you? I dare because I'm done being afraid of you. Clara's voice rose. I've spent 2 years running from lies. 2 years hiding from whispers. 2 years believing that no matter what I did, people like you would always win. She shook her head. Not anymore. I'm not running. I'm not hiding. I'm standing right here, and I'm telling you, you will not take those children from their father. You will not take me from this family. And you will not win. The courtroom was absolutely silent. Then slowly, someone began to clap. It was Tomas. Standing in his seat, his weathered hands coming together in steady applause. Dr. Huang joined him. Then her husband. Then the deputy. Then Jenkins from the store, and the women who'd whispered about Clara in corners, and the men who'd looked away when she passed. One by one they stood. One by one they chose a side. Mrs. Whitmore looked around wildly, seeing her support crumble. This is... You can't, Cornelius. Her husband stood slowly. But instead of speaking in her defense, he shook his head. Prudence, it's over. What? I've looked the other way for 20 years while you destroyed people's lives. I told myself it wasn't my business. I was wrong. Cornelius Whitmore's voice was heavy with exhaustion. I won't fight for this. Not anymore. You spineless... Mrs. Whitmore. Judge Patterson's voice cut through. Given the evidence presented and the clear community support for the Callahan family, I am dismissing this petition. The children will remain with their father. He paused, then added, and I'll be forwarding Dr. Huang's documentation to the territorial prosecutor. What happened to Miss Bennett in Philadelphia was a miscarriage of justice. It won't happen again here. The gavel came down with finality. It was over. Clara stood frozen, unable to move, unable to process what had just happened. Then Jesse was there, wrapping his arms around her, and the twins were crashing into her legs, and everyone was talking at once. You did it! Lily shrieked. You won! We won! Clara corrected her voice thick. All of us. Miss Clara. Rosie tugged at her sleeve. That was the bravest thing I've ever seen. Even braver than when you faced the sheriff. I learned from you. Clara knelt down. You're the bravest person I know, Rosie Callahan. The girl's eyes filled with tears. I'm not brave. I'm scared all the time. Being brave doesn't mean you're not scared. It means you keep going anyway. Clara pulled her close. Just like you have for 3 years. Just like your mama would be so proud of. Rosie broke down, completely sobbing against Clara's shoulder in a way she'd never allowed herself to cry before. Lily joined them, and Jesse wrapped his arms around all three, holding them together in the middle of the chaos. They stayed like that for a long moment. A family finally whole. The wedding happened a week later. No one expected it so soon. But after everything they'd been through, neither Jesse nor Clara saw any reason to wait. We've waited long enough, Jesse said when people questioned the timing. I'm not spending another day pretending she's not already my wife. The church was full again, but this time the faces were friendly. Dr. Huang and her husband sat in the front row. Tomas stood as Jesse's best man. And the twins, dressed in matching blue dresses that Clara had sewn herself, served as flower girls. Clara walked down the aisle alone. No one to give her away, and that was fitting. She was giving herself freely, fully to this man and this family she'd chosen. Jesse watched her come, his eyes bright with emotion. When she reached him, he took both her hands. You're beautiful, he whispered. You're not so bad yourself. The ceremony was simple, traditional vows exchanged with trembling voices and steady hearts. When Reverend Cotton pronounced them husband and wife, The twins cheered so loudly it echoed off the rafters. "Can we call you Mama now?" Lily demanded as they walked back down the aisle. "Officially." Clara looked at Jessie, then at Rosie, who was trying hard to look casual about the question. "If you want to," Clara said carefully, "I would be honored." "We've wanted to for weeks," Rosie admitted. "We were just waiting for it to be official." "Then I'm officially your mama." Clara gathered both girls in her arms. "Forever and always." "You keep saying that," Lily giggled. "Forever and always." "Because that's how long I'm staying." Clara kissed the top of each twin's head. "Forever and always." The celebration at the ranch lasted until well past midnight. Neighbors who'd once looked at Clara with suspicion now offered congratulations. People who'd been too afraid to stand against Mrs. Whitmore now spoke openly about the changes they hoped to see in Bitter Creek. And through it all, Clara kept waiting for the other shoe to drop, for something to go wrong, for the happiness to be snatched away like it always had been before. It didn't happen. Eventually, the last guest left. The twins fell asleep, curled together on the sofa, and Clara and Jessie stood alone on the porch looking out at the snow-covered ranch. "What are you thinking?" Jessie asked. "I'm thinking that I spent 2 years believing I would never have this." Clara leaned into him, feeling his warmth against the cold. "A home, a family, people who love me without needing proof that I deserve it. You always deserved it." "Maybe. But believing that actually believing it, that's new." She turned to face him. "Thank you." "For what?" "For seeing me. Not the accusations or the rumors or the woman running from her past. Just me." Jessie cupped her face in his hands. "That's all I've ever seen. From the moment you walked onto my porch and refused to let me intimidate you." He smiled. "My magnificent, terrifying wife." Wife? Clara tested the word. "I like how that sounds. Get used to it. You're going to be hearing it for a long time." She kissed him, then soft and sure, full of promise. When they pulled apart, his eyes were bright. "We should get the girls to bed." "We should." But neither of them moved. They stood there in the cold, holding each other, looking out at the future they'd fought so hard to build. "Clara." Jessie's voice was soft. "Yes." "Welcome home." 6 months later, spring had finally come to Wyoming territory. Clara stood on the porch watching the twins chase butterflies across the fresh green grass. They moved like two halves of the same soul, always in sync, always together, but no longer closing out the world. Rosie's nightmares had faded to almost nothing. Lily's voice had grown strong and confident. They called her Mama now as naturally as breathing, and every time they said it, Clara's heart expanded a little more. The ranch was thriving. Jessie's partnership with Marcus Chen had paid off. The railroad was coming even sooner than expected, and their land values had already begun to rise. They'd hired 2 more hands, expanded the herd, made plans for a new barn. And Mrs. Whitmore. She'd retreated from public life after the hearing, humiliated by her defeat. Cornelius had filed for divorce, shocking the town. Amelia had left for the East Coast, seeking a fresh start of her own. Sometimes standing in the kitchen, Clara still expected to wake up, to find that all of this, the love, the family, the belonging, was just a dream she'd invented to survive. But then, Lily would burst through the door, demanding cookies, or Rosie would appear wanting help with her homework, or Jessie would wrap his arms around her from behind and murmur something that made her laugh. And she'd remember this was real. This was hers. This was home. "Mama." Lily came running up to the porch, breathless. "Mama, come look. There's a bird building a nest in the old oak tree." "Is there?" Clara let herself be pulled off the porch into the warm spring sunshine. "Show me." Rosie fell into step beside them, taking Clara's other hand. "It's a robin," she said. "Tomas says they're good luck." "Then we must be very lucky." "We are." Rosie's voice was certain. "We're the luckiest family in all of Wyoming territory." Clara looked at her daughters truly hers now, and felt her heart overflow. I think you're right. Jessie found them under the oak tree an hour later, all three curled together in the grass, watching the robin build its nest. Room for one more. Always. Clara shifted to make space, and he settled beside her, completing the circle. They lay there together, the four of them watching the bird weave twigs and grass into something new. Something that would hold eggs, and then babies, and then fledglings learning to fly. Something that looked a lot like hope. Tell me again, Lily demanded sleepily. Tell me the story of how Miss Clara came to live with us. You know that story, Rosie protested. I want to hear it again. Jessie smiled, pulling Clara closer. Once upon a time, he began, there was a woman who thought she had nothing, who thought she would never belong anywhere to anyone. She came to a ranch in Wyoming Territory, expecting to stay a few months, and then disappear. But she didn't disappear, Lily prompted. No, she didn't, because on that ranch there were two little girls who saw her for who she really was, and they chose her. We picked her to be our mama, Rosie said quietly, even before Papa figured out he loved her. Even before that, Jessie agreed. You saw what I couldn't see yet. We're very smart, Lily said with satisfaction. Clara laughed, the sound spilling out of her like music. You are the smartest daughters anyone could ask for. And the luckiest mama, Rosie added. And the luckiest mama. They stayed there until the sun began to set, painting the sky in shades of gold and rose. Then, slowly, they gathered themselves and walked back to the house that had been silent and sad for so long and now rang with laughter and love. Clara paused at the door, looking back at the land that stretched out before her. Land that would one day belong to these girls. Land that would carry the Callahan name forward into whatever future awaited. She thought about the woman she'd been a year ago, frightened, running, convinced she would never deserve anything good. That woman was gone now. In her place stood someone new, a wife, a mother, a member of a community that had chosen to believe in her. She thought about all the people who had told her she would never belong. All the whispers, all the accusations, all the doors that had slammed in her face. They had been wrong. Every single one of them. Mama, Lily's voice came from inside. Are you coming? Clara smiled and stepped through the doorway. She had spent her whole life searching for a place to call home. She had finally found it, not in a house or a town or a territory, but in the hearts of a quiet man and two fierce little girls who had looked at a broken woman and seen something worth saving. They had picked her. They had fought for her. They had made her part of something bigger than herself. And she had made them the same promise in return, forever and always. Clara closed the door behind her and walked into the warmth of her home where her family was waiting. She was exactly where she was supposed to be.